Everyone. It is a great pleasure to be with you today. And this is our Risale Academy series, where we discuss some academic issues in relation to Risale-i Nur, that is written by Said Nursi at the end of 19th century. So today our guest speaker is Dr. Hakan Gok. He is a research fellow at the Center for Governance, Leadership and Global Responsibility at Leeds Beckett University. Welcome, Hakan Bey.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
Thank you for accepting our invitation. We are very, very honored to have you, and this topic is very, very important. I hope that people will realize the perspective of Risale. Let me introduce you with a brief sentences, and then I will give you the platform, and you will have the floor. Dr. Hakan Gok obtained his master's and PhD in the UK, United Kingdom. He studied atheism and theism, focusing on the philosophy of Said Nursi, earning his PhD degree from Durham University. Dr. Gok's research interests are the problem of evil and suffering, arguments for and against the existence of God, atheist philosophy, life and discourse of Ghazzālī, Rūmī and Sirhindī. He is on the advisory board of Mevlana International Journal of Moral and Values Education. Some of his previous papers are Multiculturalism in Turkey, Possible Solutions to the Kurdish Issue from the Risale-i Nur perspective, Is Peaceful Coexistence Possible? Case of Mevlana Jalāluddīn Rūmī, A Comparison between Ahmad Sirhindī and Said Nursi and Albert Camus and Said Nursi. I think these are two different papers, I think.
Yes, two different papers, yeah. Rūmī and Nursi, this is one paper. Albert Camus and Said Nursi on the problem of evil is another paper.
Thank you. Professor Hakan Gok is currently living in Leeds, United Kingdom. He is the author of Atheism or Theism, The Perspective of Saïd Nursi, and editor of selected readings from the Risale-i Nur, and co-editor of India, Turkey, History, Culture and Politics books. Thank you very much, Hakan Hocam. It's an honor to have you with us today, and we are very, very willing and curious about what you have to say, what you are going to say today. And I would like to just give a few sentences about our topic. The topic today will be is there a God? The question of, is there a God? This question is a very old question, as old as humanity in your words. And in this lecture, Dr. Hakan Gok looks at how different sides of the debate and how they have argued to prove their points. This lecture particularly focuses on the philosophy of Bediuzzaman Said Nursi, and it tries to shed new light on the question. And we are very curious and very excited to listen to you today. And I will give you the floor now. And I would like to tell everyone who are in the audience that we are very eager to receive your questions. So we will have a lecture first around 40-45 minutes. And then in the meantime, while you are watching us, you can write your questions on our YouTube channel live chat section. And we will have a time at the end, about 15-20 minutes for questions and answers. So please feel free to write your questions on our live chat section on our YouTube channel of Respect Graduate School. Welcome again, Professor Hakan Gok. We are very honored to have you, and I would like to give the floor to you for your talk. Thank you very much.
Thank you for inviting me. I hope I'm not going to disappoint you after all this much praise. It happens sometimes because, you know, the expectations are really high. When you start hearing the speaker says, God, this was too much of polishing up. So I hope it doesn't work that way. I hope it is going to be a useful lecture.
Thank you.
Yes, I am. I'm joining this lecture from the United Kingdom. I live in Leeds and I work at Leeds Beckett University. Maybe not surprisingly, my background is science, physics. I'm a physicist. And a lot of people ask me, how come you jump from physics to metaphysics? Well, it is the personal experience in Britain. I noticed at some point in my career, in teaching career, I was teaching in UK colleges, I was teaching physics. I faced this question so many times. When people learn about my background, they switch to metaphysics and they start asking about God and related issues. Sort of at midpoint of my physics career, I thought, maybe I should just move to metaphysics. Then I met a professor, Professor Colin Turner at Durham University, and he says, look, I'm looking for someone with sort of, open-minded person to study, Nursi's writings, which I had already been interested. So that's how my journey started. I just wanted to discover how the debate has evolved, because it is not a new debate. As Dr. Zuleyha mentioned earlier, this God question is arguably as old as humanity itself. We have written sources roughly starts at Hellenistic period, ancient Greece. Figures like Socrates, Plato, Aristotle, if you read their works, they talk about God question a lot. And I'm not even talking about pre-Greek period. You got the Jewish prophets and religious resources. If you focus on ancient Greece forward, it has been well over 2,000-3,000 year old question, this God question. Is there a God? Is he concerned with how we live our lives? Or are we just the accidental byproduct of some random celestial events, as some may argue? My position, after spending many years studying Nursi's philosophy, it is certainly not the case. There is intelligence and intention behind our existence. Nothing is happening by chance, and there is a grand plan. So let's focus on Nursi himself. He passed away in 1960, and he wrote quite a number of books that I'm proud to announce that I have read them all. There are 4 visible arguments in Nursi's writings that he tries to prove that there is God and we are not an accidental byproduct of the universe. So in this brief lecture, I will try to combine Nursi's arguments with what was already there in the world of philosophy. And it is going to be very concise, very brief summary of my decade-old research. But before I jump into Nursi's argument, I'll briefly share with you what was there before Nursi. So let me show you these 2 figures. So everybody knows these 2 figures. This is a painting of Raphael. If you are an art person, I'm sure you can imagine the whole picture. It is a painting called School of Athens. What Raphael did, he painted all famous figures inside Sistine Chapel. I just took a section because this is quite relevant to our topic today. The figure on the left with red gown is Plato. he was the student of Socrates. Socrates didn't write much. He just trained Plato, and we learn about his thoughts thanks to Plato's writings. The figure on the right with gray gown is Aristotle, and he happens to be the student of Plato. So we got three great figures: Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle. They spent quite a lot of time debating God question. Is there a God? Is this happening by itself? If you look at Plato, he's pointing the sky, and he says, yeah, I mean, all this is thanks to God up there. Whereas Aristotle sort of disagrees, and he says, no, just look at the universe and look at the nature, and we can explain our existence using nature. So it is quite different in terms of explaining how things are happening. Although Aristotle, we all think he was a philosopher, he was also the founding figure of science of biology, and he spent a lot of time trying to understand the universe. I will show you another image, how they try to explain our existence now. So this is one argument. You should be, probably I should just choose this one. Ancient Greeks looked at existence in terms of causality. They looked at the world of physics, and they spotted how everything is interconnected. For every effect, there must be cause. For every result, there must be reason of set of reasons. And there is this train analogy. I know what you're thinking. There was no train at the time of those figures, but this is the way I present causality. This is cosmological argument in philosophy. Among top 5 arguments to argue for the existence of God, this is one of the most common one. We looked at causality, how things are interacting with each other. So this is how the argument goes. For every effect, there must be cause. If you look at the orange car right at the back of this train, and if I cover the rest of the train, and if I ask you this question, what is the cause of the movement of the orange car? You will tell me, automatically you say, it is being pulled by the yellow car right in front of it. Then comes my next question. What is the source, reason of the movement of the yellow car or carriage? And you tell me it is the purple one. So one is pulling other one. It goes until we reach locomotive. So we call this in philosophy regression, going backward. Then you come to a point, because time has a beginning, causality must have a beginning too. So what is the source of all these causes? And the ancient Greek says it is the locomotive, and they define it unmoved mover, or the first cause. They conclude that there must be something causing all the rest of the movement. This is, in philosophy, what we call cosmological argument. Basically starting off with cosmos, focusing on science, and try to figure out the origin of the movement. I will take you to the 20th century, and I'll talk to you about Edwin Hubble. Probably you all know Hubble. He was observing further galaxies and stars and recording. I know what you're thinking. How can you observe a far distant galaxy and record? trust me, they do. So if you are into astronomy, you notice a slightest change in the celestial system. Hubble was observing the universe, some light sources, and he noticed the light was changing. So you know the concept, it's called redshift. Probably you know Doppler effect before you know redshift. Let me just explain what Doppler effect is, then I'll take you to the star, then I'm going to connect it to the train, and everything will make sense. If you are sitting still by a roadside, and if a vehicle is approaching from distance and driving past you, the sound you detect is not uniform. At first, it is very weak because the light, the source of sound is far away. As it gets closer, you hear louder and louder, and as it passes away, it just gets lower and lower. So this is, in physics, what we call Doppler effect. So this is the sound version of it. Same applies to light. If a light source is moving closer to you or moving away from you, the color, the tone of the color changes. So Edwin Hubble realized the color of the galaxy he was observing was changing to the reds. So we call this red shift. And it means the galaxy was moving away from him. Why is it important? Well, it is important because we physicists, we understand that galaxy is expanding. How do we know this? Because the light, tone of light is changing. So this is redshift. So what is the connection between the train, the Greeks, and cosmology? When the Greeks talk about the first cause, they said, look, there must be a beginning, and everything must have started from that. And Hubble said, well, there was a beginning, and it's called the Big Bang. Because if you rewind the current universe, it is expanding. If you reverse the tape, rewind the tape, everything was in some point. That's the time of explosion. How does Nursi explain this then? Well, Nursi says the universe is not an accident. It is part of a plan. Someone with intelligence, someone with will, and someone with power. Ilm, irade, qudra. 3 terms he uses. Someone with these qualities, he started the universe. He created the universe. Therefore, he created everything in the universe. And he says that creator, God, creates by 2 ways. One is out of nothing. The original term for this is ibda, out of nothing. That is, and in the Quran it appears in several places, إِنَّمَا إِذَا أَرَادَ شَيْئًا أَن يَكُلَ لَهُ كُن فَيَكُن. When God wants something to happen, he just says be, and it is. Kun fayakun. And Nursi says, well, he implies, I put the verse in his mouth, he implies that is kun fayakun. So God created the entire universe out of nothing. Kun fayakun. What is the other way that God creates? According to Nursi, this is the last paragraph in the 23rd Gleam. And he says the second way God creates is by means of construction and building. The original term is insha. So God created the universe out of nothing, and he's continuously creating using the material he initially created and systems such as carbon cycle, nitrogen cycle, water cycle, because the universe is working around cycles. God created those systems, and he's implementing the systems to create new things. So this is continuous creation. So, in a way, they are on the same page. So we understand Nursi, like the Greeks, used a version of cosmological argument. So he says, let's forget about everything else. You have your mind and brain, and you got your observation skills, and you are in the middle of a universe. You can find out that this has not happened by accident. This has made by someone by using this method. It is the cosmological argument. He uses this method. The second method Nursi uses to demonstrate that there is God, there must be a God, is a bit like in line with Newton's view. Let me show you what Newton said first. So he's my other hero. You know, if you're a physicist, you got heroes like, you know, Newton and Einstein and the like. So let me just show you what Newton thinks. This is our man when he was young. He said, you know, he is the father of classical physics. We respect him hugely. He said, this most elegant system of the sun, planets and comets, could not have arisen without the design and dominion of an intelligent and powerful being. This is what the greatest physicist said. He says, look, I'm just looking, I'm making the calculations. There is no way all this is happening by itself. This is the physicist approach. And our other hero is William Paley, another Englishman. He comes up with an analogy. He said, imagine you go out for a walk and you stumble across a shiny object on the floor. You picked up, it happens to be a clock, watch. You open the lid of it and you look. It is working for a specific purpose. It is a set system, set made by someone with a specific purpose, specific knowledge and intelligence, and it is serving a specific purpose. This is William Paley's watch and watchmaker analogy. This takes us fast forward to Nursi. Nursi says, well, I agree with these two guys, and he says, nothing is random. He says, look at William Paley's watch and look at you. Who is more complicated, the watch or you? He says, like Paley's watch, you are a lot more complicated than that watch. So if you cannot think of that watch coming into existence by chance, there is no way you can accept the argument that human beings, animals, and other beautiful creatures have come into existence by accident. You see, he is on the same line with Newton and Paley. So this is what we call in philosophy the design argument, or in Greek, teleological argument. So nothing is accidental, nothing is random. There is purpose and plan behind everything you observe. So this is also Nursi's second argument. I usually combine these two in one, and Nursi calls it, he doesn't use strictly philosophical terms, he comes up with his own terms. So great figures usually do that. They say, look, why should I pick what they said? I'm going to come up with something original. That's what makes Nursi novel, lots of originality. He sort of combines cosmological argument, that is, starting off what is already out there and regressing into the origin of the present, which is cosmological argument, and he also takes the teleological argument, which is also called design argument. He puts them together and he says, right, my first way of arguing for the existence of God is the great book of universe argument. And the original term for this in Risale-i Nur is Kitab-ı Kebir-i Kainat. So he combines those two arguments in his original title, the great book of universe. So this is, according to Nursi, the first way of understanding that there is God. What is the second way then? Nursi says, when God created the universe, he put mankind on it, different from other creatures. What is different with human beings? I mean, some suggest we are just, another branch of animal kingdom. But we are fairly different. We have ability to speak in different languages. We have ability to think. We are analytic people. We got emotions. And we have free will. So, irade-i juz'i, Nursi calls it. So we are different. We can make evil or good. So Nursi says, well, human beings are different because they are given free will and they are here for a test. So, and he bases his argument on a Quranic verse. خَلَقَ الْمَوْتَ وَالْحَيَاةَ لِيَبْلُوَكُمْ أَيُّكُمْ أَحْسَنُ عَمَلًا. And he says, when the creator, when he created the universe and when he created human beings to test them, he didn't leave them without guidance. He sent them guidance. And what is the guidance? According to Nursi, the second way of knowing that there is God is revelation. You have religions. So, some religious traditions are, semi-made up, but majority of them, you understand they have divine origins. And you have figures preaching those messages. We call them prophets. So Nursi says the second way of knowing that there is God is that his communications, because he is sending human beings revelations and messengers. So that makes Nursi's third argument, the existence of prophets. But I'll show you one slide before I move forward. Not C.S. Lewis, not Kant. I want to show you, if I can find. Right. Yeah. This is, I'll just share the full slide. Whoops, not this one. I apologize, bit of technical glitch. Right, this is William James. He's an American philosopher and psychologist, and he studied personal religious experience of individuals, because there is this phenomena, there is the physical realm, and there are people telling us that they have experience. We call this argument from a religious experience, ARE. And he studied this concept. There is field of study in psychology and philosophy. But Nursi's approach is fairly similar, rather different. This is the gist of Nursi's argument. I just put the words in his mouth. I just sort of elaborate his philosophy. When people talk about Jesus, Moses, Abraham, Prophet Muhammad, we talk about these figures. And when you look at the current data at hand, they are quite similar. They have a lot of similarities, and you feel that they are fed from the same source. But the question is this: can the existence of Moses or Jesus or Abraham or Noah be evidence of God? Well, according to Nursi, yes. And according to Colin Turner, Professor Turner at Durham University, yes, it is an argument for the existence of God. I want to talk about this briefly. When I was studying my PhD, I was looking into ways to argue for the existence of God and how people counter-argue or argue for the non-existence of God. And Colin Turner, we had quite enjoyable supervision sessions with Colin Turner, with tea and snacks. And he knows I'm a scientist and I'm a physicist, I'm not a theologian. And at some point he said, Hakan, which one do you think is the strongest argument for the existence of God? As a physicist, as a scientist, I said, this teleological argument, design argument, to me is very powerful. You know, I just study the universe, I look at DNA, I look at the workings of cells and tissues, and I'm not even going into the emotions and feelings and speech. Oh, it is mind-boggling. I said to him, this is quite powerful. And I returned the question to him. I said, so which one is the most powerful argument to you? He says, you'll be surprised, but I think argument from religious experience, that is nubuwwah, the prophethood, to me is the strongest. And he elaborated on it. And this is roughly his explanation. And I want you to compare this explanation with all the prophets we know, at least by name. We know at least 20, 30 of them by name. And that there were many, many more. He said this: imagine I'm sitting in my front yard and someone comes from that direction and he says, oh, this and that happening in the town center. Let's say there is a fire in town center, and he just walks past. At first, I'm not moved. 10 minutes later, another person comes from another direction and he reports the same news. Now I scratch my head. So I said, what's going on? So half an hour later, someone else from another direction comes and gives the same report. After the third person, now I'm 100% sure that is happening. This is a simple situation that you use your judgment. If three independent people coming from three different directions at three different times and reporting you the same thing, you have no doubt that the news is true. And he says, think about all these prophets. No internet, no connection, no telephones, no letters. One came 8,000 years ago, one came 2,000 years ago, one came in that part of the world, one in this, but they are reporting the same thing. Allahu Ahad, La ilaha illallah. That's the essence of their message. You know, you apply this analogy to the prophets, and you have no doubt. I mean, what are the chances that all these people coming and reporting the same thing, that there is God and the universe is not accidental but intentional, life is a test, and there is a resurrection once you die? I mean, what are the chances? If it happens today, you say, oh, it's some sort of conspiracy. Probably they have a WhatsApp group and they sort of discuss and play this trick on us. But this is happening at the time of Noah, at the time of Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, you name them. All different prophets, they are giving the same news. And this argument from religious experience, revelation and the prophethood is arguably one of the strongest evidence that there is God. In the last few minutes, I will explain Nursi's fourth way of arguing for the existence of God. Let's sum up first. Let's recap. Probably some of you have already drifted away, because it's the 21st century and the attention span of an average YouTube viewer is under 10 minutes. That's why there are a lot of videos less than 10 minutes, because if it is more than 10 people don't even click. And this lecture is 45 minutes, quite challenging, quite ambitious. Let me recap what has happened so far. Nursi says there is God. Nursi says the universe and our existence is not accidental, but intentional. And he says, I give you 4 evidence for this. The first one is what he calls the great book of universe, Kitab-i Kebir-i Kainat. That is Nursi's first argument to argue for the existence of God. Nursi says the second evidence of mine is the existence of revelation and the Quran in particular. And he spent a lot of time and he wrote many, many pages on the miraculousness of the Quran, demonstrating that it is not some random text, it is a divine text. So this is his second argument. And the third one is the existence of prophets and the Prophet Muhammad in particular. This is third argument. And the fourth one hits the sweet spot. You can be a person, very secular person, not religious at all. Nursi's fourth argument is human conscience. He calls it vijdan, human conscience. He says, imagine you don't have prophets, imagine you don't have any revelation, you just have universe and yourself. And imagine you are a castaway on an island. He says, your conscience will lead you into understanding that the whole universe is not accidental. There is someone behind all this. And this idea appears in a Spanish Muslim's novel. He wrote way before Robinson Crusoe. I'm sure you all know Robinson Crusoe of Daniel Defoe, and you think, oh, what a lovely story. But actually, the origin of that story is Ibn Tufayl, and he wrote a novel called Hay Ibn Yeksan. When you compare two books, you scratch your head. You say, hang on, what's going on? I put Robinson Crusoe aside. I'll tell you briefly about Hay Ibn Yeksan. That is the novel written by Spanish Muslim called Ibn Tufayl, several centuries before Daniel Defoe. So that's the story of a child. He is raised by some deers on an island, and he's the only human being on that island. And this is Nursi's argument from conscience. That little child, he investigates the island, he investigates the animals, looks at the stars. And there are parallels with Prophet Abraham's story in the Quran, because he tried to understand and explore. So in the story, the child, there is no books, no civilization, nothing but sea, tropical forest and animals. And he concludes, well, I'm different. I got my emotions. I can think, I can judge, and I cannot be an accident. There must be someone that I can't see, but I can feel. So he comes to a conclusion that there must be a maker of the universe. We call him God. To sum up, according to Bediuzzaman Said Nursi, there are 4 ways of understanding that there is God. The first way is the great book of universe. And in philosophy, if I open parentheses, it is cosmological argument and design argument, also known as teleological argument. So he used similar methods. And his second argument is divine revelation and the Quran in particular. And his third argument is the existence of prophets and the Prophet Muhammad in particular. And his last argument is you, because you got your own conscience, you got your own wijdan. So even there was no books, no revelation, no internet, no libraries, you were on your own on an island, you would be able to understand that there is a maker. So this summarizes Nursi's ways of arguing for the existence of God. Maybe on another session, we should look how he encounters the atheist arguments, because surely they have some good arguments. They got problem of evil to start off with. So maybe on another lecture, we can look at how Nursi tackles the challenges posed by the atheists. But I would like to stick to our 45-minute time limit, and I would like to stop here. Then I pass the microphone to Dr. Zuleyha. Yes, madam.
Thank you very much, Dr. Hakan. We are it was very interesting, I think, to think about all those 4 different arguments all together. I couldn't help but think that, you know, in order to know who the creator is, we actually need 4 of them all together. 4 of them support each other, don't you think?
That's true. That's why, like Ghazzālī, Nursi says great mutakallimun, great Muslim philosophers like Ibn Sina and Farabi, they don't have the faith level of an ordinary believer. That is what Ghazzālī claims, simply because of what you just said. You can use universe and your conscious to understand that there is a maker, but you are facing being just a deist. You just accept that there is someone. To become a true believer, true theist, you need to look at revelation and the prophets, because you need to understand what that maker wants from you. So that is important. You have to take all 4 arguments. But if you're interacting with a secular person or someone curious, you might have a bigger impact if you use these cosmological or design arguments. But as good believers, we should definitely take all 4 arguments together.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much. And by the way, I just wanted to tell you that you said that people's attention span is very limited recently, and they would go away, but the number of the audience kept increasing. So this is a good sign that people are interested in the topic. So I have another question for you. And the question is, you have mentioned that you have read all the books of Said Nursi, and congratulations, this is a great accomplishment. I share your joy. What struck you the most among all the books of Said Nursi? What makes Said Nursi different for you? I mean, why Said Nursi? Why did you feel the need to read all the books? I mean, you generally
it was a PhD requirement. It's called literature review. They expect you to read all of them. I mean,
oh, that's another question. Yes, I thought just because of your curiosity, you have read all them. You know,
well, I mean, curiosity as well as because you need to write a chapter called literature review. So they expect you to scan all the current literature. Well, I find a lot of Nursi's writings, without much reference, are very novel, very original. even today, after all these years, we have our own mini debating circles. We always express our fascination because there is this man living in exile in a mountain, Barla, no road, no electricity, and he is writing stuff like this. Is just mind-boggling. I mean, nothing, if you read my PhD thesis or my book, you might think, the guy is trying to, fill up the word limits. This is the case in most books. You just think, this is some unnecessary stuff. But when you read Nursi's writings, every piece is valuable. There is a gem behind every sentence. And we are still unable to discover all those gems. That is my position. I find Nursi's core writings, like he uses expression kunuzu mahfiye, which means hidden treasures. To me, most of Risale-i Nur is still contains hidden treasures waiting to be explored and discovered. That's why I encourage everybody to dive in and read and think. And I'm sure you're going to find a lot of fascinating insights. So to me, all four books are very inspiring, very original, and very illuminating. I can't really say, I can't really choose. It is like asking me to choose between my three children. Which one is your favorite? Well, I just say, the little one is favorite, but make sure the other ones don't hear this. To me, all writings of Nursi is very impressive.
Mm-hmm. If you think about the audience right now, and in terms of this topic, we have a very good start to talk about this topic. We gave a big picture to the audience, but if they want to follow up and read Nursi, especially on this topic, what is your suggestion? What should they read?
Can I do a plug-in? Can I advertise myself? Well, you gave me the platform, I'll do that. Right, this is a book, I think still available on Amazon. What I did here, people are fascinated with Risale-i Nur, but it is about 6,000 pages. They don't know where to start. What I did, I selected top 20 pieces of Risale-i Nur, sort of simplify the language. It's in English language, obviously. It has become a pocket-sized 300-page book. So this might be a good start because this gives you a taster to what is in Risale-i Nur. You don't need to read the whole collection. You can start off with this because at each chapter, for example, it says divine determining. This is the chapter about divine determining. And I say this piece actually appears in the words. And it is like 20 pages. If you like this piece, now you can go and read the words. So I have a nice selection, various topics to keep the attention alive. I try not to bore people by keeping the book very concise, very short. There are about 12 chapters. In some chapters, there are 2 pieces to read. In total, there are like 20 extracts, 20 pieces from Risale-i Nur. I also put an intellectual biography that I wrote at the beginning of the book. This might be a good start, and it might be a good present as well. Bit of advertising. This is YouTube, what YouTube is all about.
Yeah, thank you very much. I have your book, and I really benefited from it, especially when I share Risale with some friends in discussions. It comes very handy because the most important highlights of the Risale collection is to be found in your selected articles.
Well, I'll tell you the story of this book. a long time ago, they used to invite me to speak to people in the US. Lots of different cities and organizations. And this pattern had emerged. I noticed people are really interested in this, divine determining, problem of evil, purpose of existence, I don't know, evolution, stuff like this. Over the years, the picture became clear. And I thought, why don't I sit down and compile a book and, make it available to public? That might be a good start. So I didn't just sit down. I said, right, I'm going to pick this one, and this. No. It came out of a personal experience of interacting with Western audience. That this is what they want to hear. This is one that they want to read from Nursi's writings. And my hope and intention was that people start with this little book. They say, wow, this is fascinating. Let's get more of where this came from. Then they, focus their attention to Risāle-i Nur itself. So this is the story of the book.
Thank you. Thank you very much. If you want to give a homework to the audience today, what would you say that they should read from Risale? Which chapter they need to read just to follow up and to deepen their understanding of the existence of God?
Right. Two pieces I can recommend. The 22nd word is where Nursi builds his argument for the existence of God. And the 23rd gleam is where he tackles the views of the atheists. So if you want to see how he builds up and how he defends, two pieces to read. They are both available in the book. One is 22nd word, and the other one is the 23rd gleam. Let me just reach my book. You see, I'm still old-fashioned. I like my books. Yeah, maybe we can just type it so that people can follow it up.
Yes, it is put in the chat by the audience.
Yeah, so 22nd word and 23rd gleam. So these are where all these ideas come from in this presentation.
Mm-hmm. One more question before we wrap up. We have talked about Nursi's perspective, and even though you gave references to other scholars in your talk, thank you very much for that, especially from the West and the East as well. In your opinion, what makes Nursi different than other Islamic scholars?
I think Nursi really, really focuses on the connection between God and human beings. And he is not happy if you just say, yeah, okay, I understand there is God. Well, everybody understands there is God because in the world of physics, we says the Big Bang. So there is the mathematical and physical evidence in accepting God. And the term philosophers used in Hellenistic philosophy, the necessarily existent, or Ibn Sina used wajibul wujud, because without accepting him, you cannot explain anything in the physical realm. Nursi doesn't stop there. He says, well, it is obvious. Look at the universe, look at the design, look at you, there is maker. What makes Nursi different is he meticulously tries to connect God and human beings, and he focuses on the message and the messenger and purpose and what is behind. So he wants you to prepare for what is beyond grave, and he wants you to live your life according to the guidance given by the Maker. So I think he really, really focuses on revelation and prophethood. So the Quran and the Prophet Muhammad, he says, look, unless you understand and you apply these, there isn't much point. Probably you're going to get a reward by accepting the oneness and existence of God, but unless you take the Quran and the Prophet fully on board, you're going to miss. So I think that's what makes him really different from the likes of Ibn Sina or Ibn Rushd or Farabi or Muhyiddin. So he really combines philosophy per se, as we know, and theology and revelation together. So that's to me what makes Nursi unique in the field.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much. We have come at the end of our time. Unfortunately, I wish we had more time and continue. Maybe for another session we can have you, as you have mentioned, you already give us a topic for another session.
Inshallah.
So I look forward for the next session. Thank you very much. I really enjoyed personally listening to your lecture and having a conceptual framework of looking how Islamically thinking Quranic perspective of Nursi and Western philosophy meets. And of course, there is a lot to argue about how they differ. And maybe in the upcoming sessions, we can touch base upon them as well. Thank you very much. And
my pleasure.
Your work. Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good day.